Today we are going deep. We're going to crack open a book from way back in 1890 that totally changed how we understand our own minds. I'm talking about William James's incredible masterwork, The Principles of Psychology. It tried to answer one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask.
Seriously, think about it for a second. How does your mind actually work? What even is a thought? Where do your feelings come from? How does that messy, chaotic jumble of ideas and memories swirling around in your head become, well, you?
You see, before William James, the study of the mind was kind of stuck. On one hand, you had these abstract philosophical debates that went all the way back to ancient Greece, and on the other hand, you had the basic biology of the brain, nerves and tissues. There was no real bridge between the two, no actual science of our inner experience.
And that is exactly the problem William James wanted to solve. He was determined to carve out a new path, a new kind of science that could study the mind seriously, but without ignoring how incredibly complex and personal it is.
So to really get what a big deal James was, you have to understand the debate he was jumping into. The main idea at the time was something called structuralism. Structuralists tried to break consciousness down into its smallest pieces. Sensations, images, feelings. They kept asking, what is a thought made of? But James came along with his new idea, functionalism, and asked a totally different and frankly more interesting question, what is a thought for? What's the purpose of consciousness? How does it help us navigate the world?
So, who was the guy who dared to ask such a huge question? Well, to really appreciate his work, you gotta know a little bit about the man himself, William James. James was not your typical academic. Not at all. He grew up in this incredibly brilliant family. And yes, the famous novelist Henry James was his brother. He studied everything from painting to medicine at Harvard. He was a doctor, a philosopher, a biologist, and that unique mix gave him this amazing wide-angle view of the human mind.
And he poured all of that knowledge into his great work. And get this, it took him 12 years to write it. This wasn't some casual project, it was an obsession. We're talking about a 1,200-page, 2-volume deep dive into the nature of consciousness itself. That dedication alone tells you how ambitious this was.
And out of that massive effort came his single most famous idea, the one that was so elegant, so powerful, that we still use his metaphor to talk about our minds today.
So, before James, the common thinking was that thoughts were like individual links in a chain. Click, one thought. Click, the next thought. James just said, nope, that's not how it feels, is it? Our inner life isn't a chain, it's a river. It flows, it twists, it sometimes rushes and sometimes slows to a crawl. It is one continuous, unbroken stream.
I mean, how perfect is that? This one simple metaphor just clicks. It captures this deep truth about our own experience. The thought you're having right now isn't separate from the feeling you had a second ago. It's all part of the same current, the same personal flow.
But James didn't just stop with that one big idea. Oh no, he applied this new way of thinking to everything, our emotions, our daily habits, our sense of self, and he started with a theory of emotion that is genuinely mind-bending.
Okay, get ready for this. It's a classic. We all assume we know how fear works, right? You see a bear, you feel scared, and then you run. James looked at that and said, what if you have it completely backwards? According to James, the emotion we call fear is the feeling of your body's changes. You don't run from the bear because you're scared. You feel scared because your brain registers that your heart is pounding, your palms are sweating, and your legs are already moving. The physical reaction comes first. The emotion is just your brain's awareness of it. How wild is that?
James also had this incredible insight into the power of habit. He saw it as way more than just a personal quirk. For him, habit is what holds society together. All our little routines, from saying hello to going to work, they act like a giant flywheel, giving our lives stability and structure. And that frees up our conscious minds to focus on new, important things.
So why does a book written in 1890 still matter so much? Because these ideas didn't just stay in psychology textbooks. They flowed out, just like that stream he described, and changed everything.
His work created these massive ripples everywhere. In psychology, he basically founded the entire field in America. In philosophy, he kicked off huge new movements. And maybe most famously, his ideas jumped right out of the science lab and into the world of art and literature.
You know that whole literary technique of stream of consciousness writing?
That comes directly from William James. When modernist writers like James Joyce and Virginia Woolf wanted to show us what it was really like inside their characters' heads, that chaotic, flowing, unfiltered river of thoughts, they were borrowing a concept that a psychologist had pioneered.
And that brings us to one last really deep thought. James's ideas changed science and art, for sure, but they also leave us with this profound question. If your mind is never the same from one moment to the next, if it's always this flowing stream, then who exactly are you? Who is the self that's experiencing it all? It's a heck of a question to leave you with.